Several years ago, a pastor named Dr. Han, who is a distinguished pastor at a huge church in South Korea, was honored at his 50-year class reunion at Princeton Theological Seminary. See, Pastor Han pastored the largest Presbyterian church in the world with well over 50,000 communicant members. While there, he talked about how they examined their elders and preparing them to become leaders in the church. They had 4 criteria that they tested them on: Bible, theology, church history, and common sense. Dr. Han said that they borrowed these principles from Paul's teaching in Philippians. So let's dig in to see how that church borrowed them. And this is my prayer, that your love may abound, more and more in knowledge and depth of insight, so that you may be able to discern what is best and may be pure and blameless for the day of Christ, filled with the fruit of righteousness that comes through Jesus Christ to the glory and praise of God. The first prayer that Paul prays is that love may abound, that it would abound in knowledge and truth in many ways. Now for us, especially within our American culture, we look at love and we think about falling in love. We think about love with these butterflies and all that kind of stuff. But the love that Paul is talking about here, that love is a choice. Love is a choice. We may feel feelings that we don't necessarily have control over when we look at a pretty person. But the love that Paul is talking about, the love that God is calling us to, is a love that makes a choice. The choice to love our neighbor, the choice to love our spouse. That's what he's after. So Paul joins these 2 different words, love and knowledge. The Greek word that he uses for love is agape. It's the same love used in 1 Corinthians 13, where it's talking about God's love for us. It's a love that's definitely a choice. It's a love that knows no bounds. It's a love that never ends. And he joins it with this word knowledge, which in Greek is epignosko, which simply means deep knowledge. So love and knowledge go together. And as we grow in knowledge about God and about what he desires from us, we grow in our love for each other. The church in Philippi was doing a great job at loving. Paul is praising them more than any other church that he's come into contact with. But the prayer that Paul prays for the church in Philippi is a prayer that echoes throughout the centuries. Because we, probably more than any other time, need to remember that we are called to love. That we are called to let the love of God flow through us and into others. I think of the movie Despicable Me. Gru, this weird-looking creature at the beginning of that, adopts these 3 girls in order for his own selfish desires. He has this big master plan where he's going to steal the moon. When he puts them to bed the first night, he refuses to read them a bedtime story. But by the end of the movie, he not only reads them a bedtime story, he writes them one. And he says to the girls, "I love you." This is the kind of change of heart Christians often need as we grow in love and knowledge. The second prayer Paul prays is that the Philippians would have discernment. The Greek word he uses there is aesthesis, which means a deep understanding. Maybe you say it this way, that what Paul is praying for is common sense. And if there's anything we need in this world right now, it's common sense. I love how Psalm 119 puts it. The psalmist says, "Teach me good judgment and knowledge." This should be at the top of our prayer list, not just for us, but for everyone we know. The Scottish theologian Sinclair Ferguson talks about 4 ways that discernment helps us in our daily life. The first is this: it acts as a means of protection, guarding us from being deceived spiritually. The second is it's an instrument of healing when exercised in grace. Think about this in regards to what Paul says in Romans 8. All things work together for the good for those who love him. When we have the ability to discern, we can see through both the good and the bad and see their broader impact. The third is it functions as key to Christian freedom. The zealous but undiscerning Christian becomes enslaved to others, to his own understanding, to his own uneducated conscience, to his unbiblical pattern of life. Growth in discernment sets us free from such bondage, enabling us to distinguish practices that may be helpful in some circumstances from those that are mandated in all circumstances. Finally, discernment serves as a catalyst to spiritual development. The discerning Christian goes to the heart of matters. He or she knows something about everything, namely that all things have their common fountain in God. Increase in knowledge, therefore, does not lead to increased frustration, but to a deeper recognition of the harmony of all God's works and words. The third and final prayer that Paul prays is for the fruits of righteousness. Some call this good works, others call it acts of mercy. Paul is simply calling the church in Philippi and you and I to live out our faith, to do good works for others. Martin Luther puts it this way: what St. Augustine says is true. He who has created you without you will not save you without you. Works are necessary to salvation, but they do not cause salvation, because faith alone gives life. Good works shows faith to be present, just as fruit shows a tree to be good. In James 2, James says, "Show me your faith, and I'll show you my works." Martin Luther went on to comment on that, and he said, "We are saved by faith alone, but faith never comes alone." Paul's three prayers for the church in Philippi are needed now more than ever. We need love, we need common sense, and we need good works. And it's all to show who we worship. It's to show Jesus to the world. My prayer for you is that you would pray these three prayers on a regular basis as you grow and mature in your faith in Jesus Christ.